this. Great. So just so everybody knows, we'll record this now so we can post it later so all the other teachers can see. And without any further delay, allow me to introduce today's guest of honor, Darcy.
Well, that wasn't much of a lead-in, was it?
And also we have Celeste who will be joining us today to kind of help keep the conversation going. And I believe Thomas Miller will join us soon too. Great.
Okay. Who was it? Katie O'Hare had, this all started from a post from Katie O'Hare. And I've been wanting to have a class in IELTS through 51 Talk for a long time. And they had some kind of class offered, but they have been so busy teaching teachers that they really haven't been doing much in teaching the teachers they got. So I would like to have some dialogue between IELTS teachers so there's some consistency between what kids experience. I get kids that really don't know anything. And first of all, we need to kind of, I would like to agree collectively on what is the function of this class through IELTS, through Talk. What's it supposed to do? I don't think it's meant to teach a student to be a B2 speaker. I think it's meant to coach them on how to take the test. Any comments? Please? Don't all speak at once.
I agree with you that it's meant to help them to get ready to take the test if they're going to another country or they want to have a job in another country. It's going to prepare them for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so there, to be successful at IELTS, there needs to be some underlying English leading up to the test. We can't make a kid a B2 speaker in 6 or 7 lessons. It's just not possible. So I give them a lot of stuff. I send a lot of materials to kids. In fact, I think I scare most of them away because I give them so much stuff. And they figure, well, I'm not going to study all this. I just want to pass the test.
And so, in the chat box, I'm going to be putting some information, some links, and other information I found. Sorry to cut you off, Darcy. Sorry.
No problem. No, you're the. Okay. So I thought maybe we could share what do people do for IELTS. How do you guys teach it? I think it's imperative to understand the scoring system and what are they listening for. There's an old adage, teach to the test, and I taught at a Cambridge school here, so we went through PET and KET and FCE and TOEFL and SAT and IELTS, and all the upper grade tests, SAT, TOEFL, IELTS, FCE, are all level tests, and this happens to be a level test for B2, and so I start out with that. So I really want this to be a forum. I don't want to moderate this thing forever. I want this thing to be organic and everybody share their experiences, because collectively we can be smarter than we are independently.
Okay.
I have a question. Do you compare these IELTS to our ACTs?
Our meaning America's ACT?
Right. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, they're all level tests to find out, you know, where the speaker is. I use a what's called a speaking discriminator, which allows people to see where they are on this. All of these college level English tests are to see whether you can survive in college, right?
Yeah.
Well, and it tells you what
disagree. I
level, what
completely
college
disagree.
you're going to go to. You don't-
No.
where you're headed. The ACTs do. It tells you
Yes,
you
but
have to score a
but,
certain, you know.
but as a person who's passed a university proficiency exam, I can tell you that studying for university proficiency exam in language is completely different than SAT. It's 10 times more daunting, for one. Another, it's actually testing your ability to speak. It's testing your ability to communicate.
Right, that's what I'm asking.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, that was my question.
So it's more similar to the TOEFL, I would say.
That's what I
And,
wanted to know.
The IELTS and the TOEFL are very difficult to pass. You can pass an SAT and get a 200 just by putting your name down, versus a TOEFL or an IELTS. It's a completely different animal.
Then why do you think that these schools in China don't have the children speaking? So many of these kids I get can read really well, yet you try and get them in a conversation and they're stumped.
In 2 words, class size.
Right.
Because when you have 50 kids, I mean, even in America, we have 20 to 30, and look at an average American. They can't speak Spanish worth anything.
Right, right.
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think the other thing I taught in China in a private place, but also in public schools, and class size. The other thing I would say that the reason they have the same challenge that American kids do in learn foreign languages is the cardinal sin of teaching foreign languages is learning from someone who's not a native speaker.
Right.
The IELTS right now is being used. I'm in the Philippines now. And the Philippines is regarded by Chinese as a bilingual English-speaking country. They treat Filipinos as native speakers for visa purposes. However, I can tell you right now that nurses in the Philippines, fewer than 30% of them are scoring well enough to go abroad to work in the UK or Canada or the US. The English proficiency here is plummeting for whatever reason. And if I may, my background before going to China to teach was I was helping American graduate students, Chinese graduate students at a university in the U.S. And what I discovered was that whether they took the TOEFL or IELTS didn't really matter. The issue was that some of them scored very well. They had to do that to get admitted to the universities. And for the first semester, if not 2 semesters, they were absolutely lost. They could barely function. They couldn't understand professors. They couldn't communicate with their classmates. A lot of graduate programs require group work, and they just were in tears, ready to go back home. And I helped a number of them who went on to succeed. So that's my perspective.
Listening is a much more critical skill than speaking.
It is. And
Absolutely.
when I was in China teaching, and the people I work with here in the Philippines who want to go abroad to teach, I say, this is a qualifier to get you admitted to the university. But you need to understand that if your goal is to go abroad and study, you have to prepare to live there, to understand your professors. And so that was my approach when I was teaching IELTS in China, and the school I worked at did not appreciate it. They just wanted test scores, period. That was the results they were.
Well, you wanted them to learn.
I wanted them to learn so that if they succeeded at getting admitted to a university abroad, they would be able to function in that country successfully. Yeah.
Well, that's the idea. Supposedly, if you're a B2 speaker, the idea of being a B2 speaker means that you can successfully live in a foreign country and go buy groceries and get on the bus and interact with people.
And I happen to have taken, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the HSK is the Chinese version of the IELTS. It's for foreigners to prove Chinese proficiency. And the same exact problem occurred. I did well on the test, but when I got to China, I had some learning to do.
That's going to be a given, though. I mean, the HSK is specifically designed for proficiency, from what I understand. Not that I've taken or passed that test, but I know, for instance, my Norwegian test did not have anything about living accommodations and such. And there's a balance. I mean, certainly you want to have culture. Certainly you want to have. Now, there is information about politics on those tests. So, I mean, certainly government lessons and history lessons, you can combine culture there. But actually having cultural specific classes, I mean, those you can have, but I think they have to be the minimum to some extent if you are designing it to the test.
Mm-hmm.
Because time is at a premium. But like what Darcy said, you could certainly, put enrichment. I've done that before, where I've sent news articles, especially Bloomberg or CNN, things that they can actually access.
Wow.
I'm surprised that nobody doesn't have, like, in America, we have tutoring specifically, for pre-ACT tests. My daughter's going to be taking her ACT in 2 weeks. So she's taken so many extra classes that we've paid for, preparing for the ACT, that they don't have the same type of thing in China to prepare for these tests, to where you are going on a deeper level.
They do. They do have.
They do.
IELTs.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. It's a lucrative business.
It is.
It is. Okay.
It is. It is. I taught at on my days off, I taught at the executives at a factory in China, and several of them hired me to teach their teenage kids for that purpose.
Okay.
Not only that, it's so intense. I don't know about anybody else, but my middle school students are like super stressed, and I'm essentially teaching them these lessons because I guess the entrance exam to high school has gotten so bewildering or whatever.
Yeah, I'm surprised that now I heard that they were going to start doing in order to get into high school, the test that these kids take to get into high school, and I don't know what that test is.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about. I can't remember what it's called, but it's before, obviously, the high school to college.
I'm sorry.
It's the Zhongkao. I can write it here. Gao. Kao means high test, and that's for admission to university. And the one to get into high school is Zhong, which Zhong means middle.
That they're going to start, they're going to have a portion of it oral speaking, so that these kids have to start preparing to speak orally. And I try and do a portion of my sessions at the end using the lesson vocabulary words in a conversation with my students, so that they start to speak a little bit more and get used to conversation wise. Because of that. But I don't think that the parents understand that this is going to take place. I don't know if they're got the memo, so to speak, that this is up and coming.
I think my more recent experience with the Chinese parents is that their notion of what it takes to study abroad is going to come primarily from their friends whose kids are already doing that. And one of the trends in the U.S., I don't know if this is happening in the U.K., but one of the trends in the U.S. is that the TOEFL is a requirement for admission if you graduate from a university in a country where you weren't taught in English. And so there's a trend now to take those middle school kids, prep them, and then the parents are sending them to private high schools in America, so that when they enter university in America, they're very good. If they go to 4 years of high school in America, but that first 6 months to a year is absolutely brutal for them. They're doing this with 14-year-old kids.
Well, I've seen a lot of foreign exchange students from China lately.
Yeah, and you're going to see that in high schools and even middle schools now, where they go and they live with a family member in the U.S. and just total immersion, and it's tough for a lot of them. One
of my boys, who is a regular, was really cramming because he's going to be going into 10th grade, and he was going for a interview to get into a school in Beijing, but but it's an American school in Beijing.
Mm.
And he said the interview will be totally in American, totally in English. And he said the school is totally in English. He said, unlike his Chinese school where they have an English class, this school will be totally in English. So he was really pushing and, trying to get his English up to par for this interview.
I had a 6th grader, 12-year-old kid, taking IELTS.
Wow.
He's required to have a 6.5 to get into international middle school in Shanghai.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. I mean,
nobody can say they're not serious.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I've had a lot of young kids. I got in big trouble maybe, I don't know, 2 years ago. I had this kid took a TOEFL class, and he could not read one sentence. His dad was there, and I told him, I says, this is just not level appropriate for your son, and this dad complained. I mean, I got a huge complaint out of this thing. But, what these parents do to these children, in the United States would probably be abuse.
Yeah, it would. I mean, I had a 5-year-old girl in China who attended a 45-minute lesson in the classroom. She came to the school and was dismissed at 9 p.m. So 9 p.m. she had to go home, eat dinner, and get ready for bed. A 5-year-old.
I've fall asleep in class.
Oh, all the time. Especially Saturdays. They would.
That's my worst, is when I get a student late at night or early in the morning, and you can tell they're half asleep, and my heart breaks, and I don't know what to do, if I should make them do it or if I should just do it, because I feel so sorry for them, and I'm trying to make it as easy as possible, because the mother in me is coming out and not the teacher in me, and it's terrible.
Fathers get that too.
Yeah.
It is. It's tough. I even feel I'm a group class teacher, so maybe this was inappropriate, but I want to become an IELTS teacher with 511 Talk. So that's why I joined this.
It seems like it would not be out of the question that you could have group IELTS, especially given the level of plan? 11. There is no plan.
Yeah, there is no plan, but it makes more sense because the group classes permit you to have them converse with one another, not just you.
Right. Sure.
And once you get the hang of it, and they get the hang of it, I think it could be good preparation for the oral.
There's a lot of energy that comes from the group class.
Yeah, the oral competences. And I have kids that even now, I have like 11 or 12-year-old kids that encourage each other. They actually type notes to each other and say, you can do this, and I think this could be beneficial if they would consider
I have 5 or 6-year-olds who help translate for me.
Could I address? Violetta had mentioned in the chat screen how to become an IELTS teacher. Currently on 511 Talk, there is no qualifications to be an IELTS teacher. Okay.
Okay.
I happen to use it on my banner, on my post for, in the catalog of whatever. That's the first thing I do, is because I've been doing it for a while, and I kind of like the older kids sometimes than the nose pickers.
They grow on you.
Grow on you.
Sometimes
I adore them.
You can have them.
Well,
I love them.
The thing for me with the little ones is I do only free trial lessons. So I'm not kidding. Sometimes I teach the same lesson 30 times in a month.
Yep, that's how I am. That's how, but I love it. I get so much energy from them. They're just dynamite.
So, bringing this back to specifically to IELTS, there's a larger conversation about how Chinese kids learn, but we have I have a lot of middle school kids taking IELTS now. a lot of middle school kids taking ITLs, and high school kids and college kids. And the thing that concerns me is I get them somehow in some chain of command, and they say, well, I'm going to take the test next Thursday. Do you hear this much? You know?
Heard that a lot.
You know, the middle school kids that I talk to that are 12, 14 years old, I said, look, this is a journey. Don't even think about taking the test yet, because it's going to take you until you're in the 10th grade before you're good at this. Because it's not a test like a math test where you can study some problems and then, you know, you can get through the test. What concerns me is that because we're a speaking format, that writing is never addressed, nor is listening or critical reading. And I think writing is probably 10 times harder than speaking. If you want to see what a kid's English abilities are, get them to write something down on a piece of paper. Don't talk to them, because I say it's not very far from your brain to your mouth, but it's a long ways to the tip of your finger where you write, you know. And it literally takes a different part of your brain to write than it does to speak. And like in group class FT, I get kids to write every word every time, because writing is the key to remembering something. And, you know, I get kids in lesson 2 of IELTS, and I say, okay, take some notes. It's like they've never heard this before, ever. So I don't, do you teachers make them take notes before they do a long turn? Part 2, you know, we got 26 people in this class. I want to hear from some of you guys hiding in the back. Ella, G1.
I actually do. I actually give them a rubric that they can use to create a frame. And, and I tell them, I literally sit there quietly and make them write it down and read it back to me.
Right. It's pretty painful, right?
They struggle, but they get better very quickly if they know English fairly well.
Well, you know, with the TOEFL, you know, I don't even think they do TOEFL here anymore, but the TOEFL formats were quite old. And it was kind of a maze to figure out how they worked, because the audio in the pages, it took me a while to figure this out, but it didn't really start until page 3. And there is a format for putting your topic sentence and your reasons, and I made them write it. And most of these kids had never, ever been asked by a teacher to write anything down in a TOEFL test, in a TOEFL lesson. And it's amazing. These kids go, wow, if I do this, it's easier.
Yes.
You know, it was like an epiphany, you know, to organize your thoughts. Who would know? So I think that it would be good for collectively the teachers of 5-1 Talk to at least do the same thing in a lesson. So, you know, it's not, you know, like one, you know, if a teacher doesn't ever make them take notes. Now, not actually having ever taken IELTS, I've taught it a lot, but to get in an upper band, you have to take notes. Somebody said they were an examiner. Are there any former examiners in the group here? Speak up. I don't hear anybody. Does anybody know this for a fact? I mean, I was told that, do examiners watch them to see whether they do write stuff down? Does anybody know this?
Not about the writing, but the examiner. I mean, I was going through the process, but no. I mean, but do we need examiner status? Because that takes, you have to take the test, and you have to pass the test, and you have to obtain, if I'm not mistaken, I know I was looking at the PTE, which is the Pearson, and you have to get like some exceptional score. Plus you have to prepare for it. I mean, that's why I said it's not like the SAT, because I mean, the scores are incredible. What's required, like you were saying, 6.5 for a middle school student. I mean, it's incredible. Do we expect a 650 or 1,000 from a middle school student? I mean, they get to go to Duke if they get, on the tip score, if they get that in middle school in the United States. It's just different.
Well, the point is, I want to tell kids something that's true. The reason I asked if there was examiners, one of the teachers that had responded in the thread said that they had been an examiner. And what I've read is that it's mandatory, it's points to make notes. And it just makes sense that if this is a B2 level test for going to college, you better know how to take notes if you're going to go to college, right? And I always encourage kids, if you know the school you're going to, look up on the internet to find out what their note protocol is, because every major school has their own way of taking notes.
I think that's kind of like teachers at 5-1 Talk. It differs from professor to professor. I mean, I don't know how it is elsewhere, but I've studied throughout the United States, and I have to say that the note-taking varies significantly from professor to professor. I mean, it could vary in different countries. I don't know, but I mean, I have my bachelor's from St. Olaf College, elite school. Then I have my master's from South Carolina State. I have my TESOL certification from University of Missouri, which is one of the top TESOL programs. And I mean, it just differs. Not in today's age, it's a different world. They're not expected to do note taking at this point. I don't think, honestly. I mean, there are students who are asking for study guides. Can you imagine us asking for a study guide?
I think most people just record it with their phones and then take it back and use that as their study guide.
Yeah.
To tell you
especially for art history and stuff. Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
And then I think what I really think they do is they take their phones, they record it, they go back, they streamline it through to Google, which picks it up and will give them any site they need to further research it. So I think note taking is a part of a past that these kids today, at least, okay, my kids who are Google experts, my daughter who invented My Algebra 1, okay, online, note taking is like using a Rolodex to them, I mean, what?
We kind of digress in the sense that they need to take notes so they can answer part 2.
Yeah,
okay?
The speaking
These
test.
Kids
they're given one minute to take notes.
Right.
I'm actually encouraging this at a very low level, but in the group class 3 trials, at a pretty low level, this would be level 2. There's a part later in the lesson where they have to spell. And the first lesson, I'll go back and let them look at the words again before we take that part where they have to type and spell. But every subsequent lesson, I tell them from here on out, if you don't take notes, you won't be able to spell this when it comes to that part. And that's at the very low level. So the concept is alien to them.
On the listening part, if you misspell a word, it's wrong.
It's wrong.
Yeah. If you misspell a word on the listening part, it's wrong.
Yep.
Darcy, was your point, Darcy, that you want to know what the process is that those people who are testing these kids and judging them and grading them, you want to know that process? Because that's something I've wondered about.
I'm just kind of concerned that there's continuity between teachers on 5-1 Talk, that if a student takes, 4 different teachers, that they're going to get kind of the same experience.
Right. And I'd like to see a process where they actually take an exam so I understand what to tell the kid to expect, which I really don't know.
There's enough people here. There's enough people here in this class, and I think this is representative. I mean, there's 3,000 supposedly AA teachers. Okay. Now, it seems like there could be an IELTS class given by 5-1 Talk and this would answer maybe, I probably get the name wrong, Violetta's, about being an IELTS teacher. Now, I went through a young learners class to become a young learner, to teach young learners. Now, whether or not that makes me a good teacher or not, I don't know, but I think there should be some kind of continuity. Now, if Mr. Marty doesn't ever make them take notes, they're going to probably want to take classes from him because he's easier. Right? If I make him do something, and I'm not, I've been criticized a lot for not being bubbly and, TP, RP and all that stuff. And I'm trying to get him to pass the test. I'm not trying to be a clown. And, maybe some of them go away because I'm perceived to be too tough on them. This is a serious test, as has been attested. This is an important part of their life. And most of these kids are unprepared for this. Now, there's certainly a lot of them that are prepared.
Note-taking helps with a wide variety of things. It helps with grammar. It helps with their writing skills. They can also read back what they wrote down and say, oh, I didn't write that correctly. And it also helps them to correct their own work and their own English.
Yeah, I agree.
Writing anything will improve your ability to learn the word.
Mm-hmm.
Just writing the word down 10 times.
Yeah, and I've had some success with explaining it this way, is that anyone who's taken and studied Chinese, you are not going to learn those characters by looking at them. If you don't write them out, there's no chance you'll ever pass any of the HSK level tests. It's part of the process of our brains memorizing, and English is not that much different in that respect. It's very different visually, but the process of writing it puts an image into our brains because you look at it when you write it. I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, it's kinesthetic learning.
Kinesthetic learning is writing is a kinesthetic activity, right? It's done with your brain and your fingers.
Exactly.
Well, plus there's the written part of the exam, because you could argue that you could do, you could do part of it without. I mean, like Russian's the same. You can do part of it without, but the writing component, no way.
Yeah,
you've got to write.
I mean, how did we learn to spell in elementary school? We wrote each.
Well, or there's flashcards. I've been learning too. A couple of the like ni hao I can recognize because I've seen it so many times, and I don't know how to write it worth anything.
I'll give you a.
That's what Pinion's for.
That's right. Now, you're any teacher in China is going to bat you on the head if you start relying on Pinyin.
Oh yeah, I know. I had to go
It's
through
a
like
crutch.
3 or 4 different teachers before even anybody would teach me.
And there's a lull. It must be 22. I always heard in a dinner party, if there's a lull in the conversation, it's 20 after or 20 till.
I think it's 8:30 Chinese time.
Yeah, I think we're in 8:30 time. I'm in Beijing time.
Not too far off. Okay, so how many IELTS students do most people see? You have 1 or 2 or 5 or 6, or some have none, some have a lot?
I've had just 1.
Yeah, I think in the year that I've been here teaching, I've had maybe 5 in 1 year.
Yeah,
that was it.
Tons.
And did they take more than 1 class? Did they take a lot of classes?
Yeah, I've had one student take like 5 classes, and I've had probably 15, 20 students.
Before
that's
they took away
been
adults.
since December.
Yeah.
Before they took away adults, I had a lot. Right now, I have 2 regular IELTS students. Yeah. They're going to take the test in June.
A lot of them. I don't know why.
I get quite a few too.
Mm-hmm.
Mine seem to.
I think they search by your profile. If you have a lot of experience teaching it in your profile, then they may choose you. If you don't have anything about IELTS in your profile, they may not choose you.
I didn't even know what it was, and they started sending them to me, and it scared me to death. I learned the hard way.
Because you usually get the black and white form with those kids. It's not even really a textbook. And
I was like, oh no, what am I going to do?
Yeah,
Right.
that's what it did to me too. I thought, oh my God, is it malfunction or something?
Right.
Where's Timmy? Where's Cindy?
So does I send out a lot of study materials to kids. I have several zip files where I send out these speaking delimiters and these transitional words, and every part of the test, how to paraphrase, how to use transitional words. In the teaching to 7 to 9 band, if they can try to study to the 7 to 9 band, they might make 6.5. But I do think I probably get some that run away because I give them too much stuff. They don't see it as that big of a. So you may be getting some of my runaways, I suppose.
I had one student who would schedule an hour for the same class, and we would go through it very carefully and very thoroughly. And I thought that was interesting, and I felt that that was of more value to a student than the 25-minute model.
Yeah, I have a mom. I have this 6-year-old girl, 6 or 7, that I've had for long term. I mean, she was just this little kind of almost baby when I started. And her mom, they're pretty well off. And her mom always books 1 hour, the same class for the 2.5 hours. So I only need to go through half the class in the first 30 minutes. And then I go through the other half the class. And it's actually quite good.
Mm-hmm. I really like it.
Far more meaningful. The pace is better. I really, but the girl's quite bright and just really to watch them grow up on screen is pretty incredible.
Yeah, it is. And,
okay. So I'm kind of curious. This is kind of an experiment. As I said, I'm somewhat of kind of a catalyst. I like to see, I think collectively we're better off together, okay? Now, is there enough momentum that people would want to do this and maybe come up with something that's particularly interesting to themselves and offer it kind of like a book club or something? And
I think that's a good idea.
I like it.
Yeah, I do.
I like it. I mean, I think. Go ahead.
An informal forum.
There's some incredibly gifted and educated people in this group. I think probably this group represents some of the best teachers that 51 Talk has. Okay.
That's so true.
I think it's a serious group, that we're not here just because we want to get paid. We're here because we really want to teach these children.
Yeah.
It's the teaching part that we're into.
Yeah.
And the ways in which we want to teach them. Just like Darcy sending out these extra papers to the students, which is phenomenal.
I don't even know if that's legal, to be real honest.
No.
I could probably get in trouble for that.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe, but I can tell you that it's rampant in China, though. Nobody in China is ever going to complain.
I mean, I don't know that 51 Talk wants you, send that stuff out.
All I know is I've had some students where I've gotten on a really close rapport with, and I've, on the memos, I put these really glowing reports, and all of a sudden they disappear. It's like they don't come back. It's almost as if the parent doesn't want you to get that close to their child. Like the child gets that close to you, and you do this glowing report, and then all of a sudden the parent takes them off the schedule. puts them somewhere else, you know.
I think some of them are disappointed because they expect more critique. I've noticed that they want their child to be corrected every time, every single time.
Yeah.
And I don't do that.
Yes, that's not how I am either. I won't stop them saying, no, that's wrong. I let them keep going, and then I'll repeat the sentence in the proper form. And then they'll repeat it in the proper form. I'll never come out and say wrong.
When I do my memos, I generally will give them an assessment of what they need to practice on, focus on, rather than critique them. Because I'm with you guys. I don't really want to give that type of critique, but I will tell them what they need to work on, and then give them that glowing report. And I've only been with 5-1 Talk for actively really for about a year, but I have my mainstays that, you know, they're there, if not every day, at least a few times a week. That I think they all appreciate that.
With my older kids, I try to get them to correct themselves. I type out the sentence that they said to me, and I said, look at that sentence. What's wrong with it? And that gets them thinking instead of just telling them the answer all the time, like the parents do.
Right. Well, yeah, because you'll hear the parent from the background, you know, if the word is sky and the child said ska, you know, you'll hear the parent say, sky, you know. like wow. You know, like, oh, man. And, you know, but so I never do that. You know, I just say the word. I read the sentence after they've gotten done, and I'll read it the right way. And, you know.
Hey, I have an off question. One of my students, I had a student who regularly was taking me, and then all of a sudden, and in fact, she referred me to her cousin, and all of a sudden she stopped taking me, and then she came back and told me why. She told me that taking the American Academy is 4 times the price to them than taking teachers from, I guess, Philippines, Asia, or Africa.
Oh,
I can speak to that actually, because I live in the Philippines, and so does one of our other classmates today. But they 5-1 Talk mostly only has in house. The teachers here have to go to a center to teach, and part of the reason is that most people don't have high-speed internet in their home, but their pay is the Filipinos who teach for 5-1 Talk here. I probably should not get in trouble for this, but they get paid about 1/5 per hour that we do, and then they have to be in the office 40 hours a week.
Oh.
So, but there is a tremendous difference in their competence. I mean, I'm just going to say, my wife's Filipino. I've lived here for a long time, but they're not native speakers. Don't ever let any Chinese family go down the path to believe that Filipinos are native speakers. They're not.
I get a kick out of one of the criteria in IELTS is accent issues.
Yes.
And one of the things, and I always get a kick out. I tell my students, I says, don't ever listen to a Filipino teacher tell you that you have an accent. Okay?
Yeah.
Because the reality is we all have accents. Okay,
right.
Sure. Kimberly, you must be from the East Coast somewhere, right?
No, you know, and my whole life people have said that. I was born in Chicago. I was raised in Chicago. I now live in Wisconsin.
Well, that's Wisconsin. That's Wisconsin.
No, it's not. And, you know, people always ask me if I'm from New York my whole life. I say no.
Like it, yeah.
They ask me if I'm Jewish. I say no, I'm not. Actually, I'm Catholic. But they always ask me if I'm from New York and Jewish. I say no, I love lox and bagels. I wish I was. I could get good ones in New York, but I'm not.
But the point is, Kimberly has an accent, as I have an accent. I have a Western United States accent with a little bit of British Columbia thrown in.
So we can probably see a lot of little Chinese kids walking around going, so you like today?
Yeah, right. New York Bronx.
Yes, there are. In fact, when advertisers for teaching positions in China say native North American, well, that covers a lot of territory. Somebody from Boston compared to somebody from Mississippi covers a lot of ground.
Exactly. Yeah, there could be, the dialect could just change.
Sure.
Just drastically. I mean, unbelievable. Definitely.
However, I think it's everybody I've heard here, unlike other times, seems as though they try at least or make the attempt to speak standard American English. There are some that don't. And I mean, yes,
Yeah.
I think that's still important, regardless of what your regional, as I say, don't like that. I think you have to make an effort to keep the regionalism to a minimum.
Yeah, we don't have subtitles going underneath us. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, no.
I have a Cambridge American accent packet that is, I mean, you need to be a linguist to understand this thing. It's probably got, it's in a zip file. And I always, if anybody wants to learn how to have an American accent, I can send it to you. It's like it's two rather large books on PDF plus maybe 100 MP3 files telling you how to have an American accent. I tell my IELTS students, as long as your accent does not interfere with the pronunciation of your word, it's not material. It's okay. They do not grade you on whether you have a Chinese accent or a French accent, as long as you can pronounce the words correctly, correct? Am I wrong?
I think within reason, but I think
And it doesn't cause a grammar error.
Yeah.
But I worry sometimes if they have too thick of a Southern accent. There are some teachers that we have that will talk like this, and if you're talking like this, I think you're going to be, I mean, it's just the way it is. It's life.
Y'all?
Yeah. And I speak, and I can say that because I am a Southerner, and so I make an effort too.
I went to Dallas when I was in this business, and we had a seminar down there, and we were down there for about 10 days. And we come back, y'all, and we come home to Washington, y'all, hi, howdy. I mean, it's very infectious. Very infectious.
Well, two of my children said they grew up their whole life thinking that we had a French room, French room. And they didn't realize that I had been telling them it was the front, Front room. And it wasn't until they got old enough to realize that French was actually a language. And they looked at each other one day, and this is my own children. And they said, why does Mom keep thinking we have a French room? And they said to me, Mom, we don't have a French room. I said, what are you talking about? French room. They said, well, you keep telling us, go in the French room. Go in. I said, it's front, Front. Oh, they said, that makes more sense, So even my own children, get mixed up in my accent.
I'm going to try and relate this to the testing, and because for me, the ultimate goal when I have a student who wants to study abroad is that he or she functions well in that program. And maybe in America in particular, a lot of people want to stay after graduation, and that's becoming more and more difficult. One of the things I used to do where I got involved with Chinese students at graduate school at Syracuse University was I coached people who they go there and they earn these very, very good qualifications, doctorates and master's degrees, but at the end, they cannot get a job, and you can't stay in America without getting a job because of the limitation in their ability to comfortably speak with American interviewers. And I have a tremendous amount of success with that. I have students in IT who are working at Google and Yahoo and Facebook. But it's all a matter of some of them get through this testing process. They gravitate to study groups with other Chinese students. They gravitate to Chinese professors if they're in the hard sciences. And some of them actually come out of school 8 years hence, and they still don't comfortably converse with Americans. And I think that's a shame.
Yeah. Yeah. But you could see why they gravitated towards the people of their
Absolutely.
own ethnic.
And one of the things I will do if I get some more IELTS students is to actually introduce them to some of these people who are already in America and let them say how important this is, how difficult that first semester or two is going to be if you don't focus on actually speaking, listening, understanding English. Forget the test. That's a qualifier. But if your goal is to study in America, you've got some work to do.
Yeah, I was having some of my students, high school students, watching American movies because they were able to streamline them, you know, and so I told them, you know, start watching some of American movies. But then you have to be real careful on which ones you recommend.
You sure do. I've
yeah.
gotten some obscene things written in essays by students who
so
get a lot of American movies.
Yeah, I had to be real careful on what I, you know, recommended. And so, but I thought that would be a great way for them to really acclimate towards English. And understanding the English language.
I recommend a website called TED.com. There's a lot of short lectures on there about different topics, and they can learn words and phrases. If they're having trouble with talking about pollution or whatever, they can go to that site and listen to some lectures about pollution and saving the earth and whatever. I recommend that site a lot.
It's a great site. It's even for us.
Yeah. Well, I learned that a lot of them, their favorite movies were Fast and Furious. They're all into this Fast and Furious and The Rock, that movie star. And they were into Spider-Man movies, you know, so I said, well, that's good. So now start watching them in English. And so they started streamlining these in English, which I think would help them more because they were into these movie stars. In understanding what's going on, and it helps them a little bit more. And I got that from a 5-year-old Chinese student whose English was perfect. And so I asked the parents, you know, do you speak English? And they said very little, but she watches American cartoons. And this little kid could speak perfect English. You would have thought she was an American 5-year-old. And it was from watching American cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
And her English was great, which made sense because my daughter, from watching Dora, could speak Spanish. So that made sense that they could pick up that language just from the cartoons.
They love Frozen and Coco.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Frozen and Coco.
I put on there that I've had dozens of students named Elsa.
Mm-hmm.
Just dozens. I've had 2 in a single class.
Yeah, I encourage them to download lyrics and then download MP3s, listen to the lyrics, read the music while you're listening, so you can get a visual and audio connection to the word, and then pretty soon you can sing along, and it's fun. I mean, I think that's one reason why girls are so good at English, because they listen to love songs all the time, right? I do not know. I'm not very good at listening. It's a very difficult thing for me. Words do not stick in my head. I know I have a friend in America that she could listen to a song twice and know all the lyrics. I know no lyrics of any song, period. They just don't stay in my head.
Yeah.
So I want to know how we're going to do this. I guess we'll just post on the Facebook page. I think this is maybe a larger group than just IELTS, in a sense of the discussion has been more, as Kimberly said, you know, serious teaching, how to address things to teachers. I still want to know if there's some continuity between IELTS experiences. It concerns me. I want to know that I'm doing the right thing. And because there's no, you know, there's been no criteria or, you know, direction from 5-1 Talk about how we should be doing this, I guess I'll just continue doing what I'm doing and be happy.
Not speaking to that point specifically, but just overall, it's a concept. I really like this meeting of teachers just talking to other teachers because you guys all share similar experiences. What do you guys think about doing this every other week about different topics that you just want to talk about? Does that make sense? Or does that sound okay?
Yeah.
I like it.
Sure.
One last thing. Does this time work for everybody?
Yes.
Usually.
If it's
Perfect.
going to be productive like this.
Yeah.
And then the other question, we bring at least one lesson that needs to be grammatically changed, specifically the IELTs. I'm not trying to be ugly. I'm not. I'm being honest.
There's so many
If you-
bad.
Let me just share this. I
There's
think
so
you guys
many
should
bad.
bring whatever you want, and I think I won't be involved. So as teachers talking to other teachers, so really it's up to you guys, whatever rules you want to make for yourselves, but do whatever you want. I'll put it that way. Cool.
Yeah, maybe just bring a lesson and we can talk about how we can present it to our students. You know, if it's maybe a hard lesson in presenting, you know, like some of these songs that we have to sing in the beginning.
Definitely. Do you want to, do you guys think that'll be a good theme for the next meeting? Like bring one lesson you want to talk about or something, or?
Well, I just thought that to at least present it to the lesson panel or whoever gets to it, that they actually fix it. That if we agree, I mean, I don't know. It's just, especially with IELTS, because I have a hard time with IELTS and I have a hard time with the adult lessons because I end up having to reteach it. And the student is kind of weary as to why I'm saying it's grammatically incorrect. And then I have to explain the Taiwan and China example, and English in America is different than English. I don't know. So.
Yeah, for changing stuff, I think this probably isn't the best place to do that. Let's connect separately and talk about that, because that is something that we should do, but I don't think this is the best place for that. For this, let's bring things you guys want to talk about, to share experiences, and like Darcy said, to collaborate and just learn from each other. That sounds great.
Can I ask you a question, Isaac?
Please.
Is this chat over here, can you save that when you close the class?
Yes.
Can you save that?
Let me just ask all of you. So I have the chat. Do you guys want to, like, would it be useful to publish that too? Wait, probably not.
It would.
It's got your name.
Yes.
Are you sure? Let me try to remove everybody's names.
If it's posted.
Wait, let me remove people's names. And
Maybe
see how
my
long
email.
that takes. Maybe not. Let's do this. If you guys are okay, I can share with Darcy and he can read it. Is that okay? Because then it's just a teacher reading it. And Darcy, can you not share with the world, but maybe just share excerpts or stuff?
Depends on what it's worth to you.
All right. For this
And
part,
if anyone wants the PDF, you can PM me on Facebook. It's just some resources I gathered.
Yeah, I wanted to make a mailing list. So if you could PM, that would be good. PM Celeste. Don't PM me. PM Celeste.
Perfect.
Okay? With your address.
Yeah.
I think this is a great deal. I mean, this is something that I wanted to happen for a long time.
Good. Wait, if we're talking about mailing lists, okay, I'll talk with Darcy about this later, because we might include this in like the week in review or something to invite all other teachers to participate, if we want to create like a kind of a regular event like this. So yeah, let me see what we can do. Yeah.
Yes, that would be great, because not everyone can attend. Right now, this is pretty prime time for me to be teaching, so I always block off those time frames. Yes.
Right. Okay.
This is about the time it starts getting busy for me.
Great.
So yes, I do I like.
Where are you located, Shannon? Where do you live?
I'm in Florida.
Oh, in Florida? Okay.
Awesome. Okay, great. Yeah, thanks everybody. I'll post this on Facebook and include a link to this recording in the week in review so all teachers can watch it. And let's aim to do this again in 2 weeks from now. One more last question is okay, it's a weird question. Is 24 hours enough notice for people, or do you think we should post it like a week in advance? I'm afraid people would forget about it like a week in advance.
A week would be better.
Okay,
or maybe 48 hours.
A week because of our scheduling.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that.
I'm 2 weeks out.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've missed opportunities because of that.
But
right.
But then remind us the day before, okay?
Perfect. I think on Facebook we can remind the day before, but I'll try to post something on my page maybe a week in advance.
Well,
you can put it in your Echo.
Oh, that sounds dangerous.
I'm so jazzed about this. Now, I don't live in the States, so we're kind of behind things, but this is pretty cool. I show this to my students, you know, the boys. Okay. Alexa, what's 5,200 times 64? You know?
5,200 multiplied by 64 equals 332,800.
These little boys, they go, wow.
I think you're going to replace teachers that way, Darcy. Let's be careful.
I know. Isaac's going to do that, right?
No.
It's not me. It's Jeff Bezos. It's not me.
Oh, that's funny.
But
cool.
Get ready for this. This is the beginning, okay?
The beginning of the end. Okay.
Absolutely.
Let's do it. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. All right.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.